back. All right, check it out. Check it out. Check it out. Let's see. Okay, so I think it's good to start with how I feel about my car. So up until recently, I've been driving cars that were already 20 years old by the time I got them. My last car was a Hyundai, a little street drive. I loved it. I drove it around for 15 years and it was a great car, super reliable. But I started trusting it less and less because it was in 1999, so it was about 20 years old. I travel sometimes, not very far, 200 miles back and forth on the interstate. There's a lot of woods between point A and point B. It would suck if my car broke down. So I got a new car. It's a Honda hatchback, silver, still paying for it. I love this car. It's the nicest thing I've ever had in my life. It's beautiful. It's got illegal tinted windows on it. My apartment is kind of a throughway, or my parking lot, right? So if you know what you're doing around here, you can cut between blocks by kind of just walking right past my bedroom window and then walking past my car. It's like most of the time people are just walking through, they're not really bothering anybody, they're just walking through. Put up cameras a couple years ago because a car got stolen out of our parking lot out front. I just had this new car, so I got cameras, and I'm not sorry I did. It's pretty good to have them. And it actually also makes the neighbors feel safe too. I mean, I'm pretty much a hero, okay? So that's the point. The cameras have a motion detector, right? A light comes on in the motion detector and I get a notification. It was a couple weeks ago now. In the morning, the sun was just maybe peeking up a little bit and I was having coffee and my watch starts going off, which means that the camera detected motion. I've kind of trained myself to ignore it most of the time. When it starts buzzing 5 times in a row, what that tells me is that somebody's basically doing a lap around my apartment. They're hitting every camera. So I checked. One camera, I saw this guy, he has a bunch of stuff on him, indicative of somebody who sleeps in the woods, and he's walking right down my front door, which isn't that big of a deal still. But then I checked another camera and I saw him walk up to my car door and look around and try the handle on my car door and then keep walking when he couldn't get into the car. So yeah, he tried to break into my car. It wasn't cool with me. And I saw him do it. It's just crazy, you know? By this time, maybe 3-4 minutes had passed, and I thought, well, if he's checking my car door handle, maybe he found one that was unlocked, because he's probably doing this all around. I got neighbors, right? So I go outside, and I'm not expecting to see him, but he's still there, and he's kind of walking off the porch. He's about 40 feet from me. I don't know how this happened, but it just came out of me. I didn't think about it beforehand. Before I knew it, I was yelling at this guy. Just didn't contemplate it for a second. I was just like, hey man, you need to stay the fuck out of here. And I was just like cussing, using my best deep voice. You get out of here. I saw you looking at my car. Don't fucking do it. You know what I mean? I'll put the footage at the end of this video and show you kind of what happened. So he just kind of looks at me. He turns around real slow, looks at me, and holds his hands out like, what, man? So he walked away. That was it. I walked back inside. That just happened. That just spilled out of me. There was no forethought, anything. That was a fight or flight response. It was fight. I chose fight, right? And so I was walking around the park. I take walks in the park in the morning. And as I was walking, about maybe half an hour later, by this time the sun's up, right? And so I'm walking around the park and I'm in a super weird mood. Just these waves of anxiety, even though I had absolutely no thought of anxiety or being a fear or anything at the time. As soon as it happened, I started getting these little waves of anxiety. I'm walking around waiting for somebody to come jumping out of the bushes or something, even though I know that there's 0.001% chance that somebody's actually going to jump out of the bushes at me, but I'm looking over my shoulder and stuff. I mean, this caused me to go and do a little bit of research on some stuff, and just basically the fight or flight response in itself. Why was I feeling like this? What was going on, right? And so first of all, the way I was feeling was perfectly normal, and it was a heightened sense of vigilance after a traumatic event, I guess, and it's called post-traumatic response. It's different than PTSD. They're similar, but PTSD is a prolonged version of the post-traumatic response where it starts to really affect your life. It's an adaptive behavior that becomes a problem because it gets out of control and becomes maladaptive and starts affecting your life in a negative way. But it's pretty normal to just after something happens that freaks you out, you stay a little bit freaked out for a while. So these are natural adaptations that people have. It's the fear response, basically. And so fear is defined as an immediate response to a specific threat triggering the fight or flight response. That's what fear is. It's a survival instinct, protects us from danger. It makes us extra reactive. I didn't think about it. And so we have this thing inside of us that is able to act without us thinking about it first. It's a mechanism, right? So if you're in the woods, you're an early person, you're in the woods and you see something that can eat you, a predator, like a lion or something, you're not gonna be like, what should I do? You're gonna either run or you're gonna try to fight. I don't think I would be trying to fight. And every living thing, almost every living thing has this, even little teeny tiny insects. They have a certain form of the fight or flight response. And I started wondering what the similarities were between fear and anxiety, because fear can cause anxiety. We all know anxiety is pretty uncomfortable. I don't think that animals really get anxiety. People get anxiety because that's slow thinking. It's not an immediate response to threats. It's more of a hypervigilance against threats. You're projecting out into the future, okay? And so in my normal fashion, I had to go look some stuff up. And so I'm gonna say some animal facts, some weird animals. And some of these are a little bit intense. So we all know about the possums, they play dead. Of course, we all know skunks, they spray a foul-smelling liquid. And it's weird, they have this stuff that is created by their bodies that they spray out of their butt, right? Pretty crazy. Chameleons, they change color to blend. Stop and think for a second how crazy that is. Chameleons can somehow figure out what is going on around them and then they can blend into that. That kind of thing has always been amazing to me. Okay, so next we have, this one's crazy. There is a hairy frog. It's called the hairy frog. I don't exactly remember where it's from, but it breaks its own bones to create makeshift claws that can fend off attackers. This frog breaks its own bones so it has something sharp to fend off its sea cucumbers, which are I always thought they were pretty primitive, you know? They're just a little, I guess they're mollusks or something. They can expel their internal organs out of their butts to confuse or entangle predators, it says here. Their organs are sticky and sometimes toxic, and they regenerate their organs in a few weeks. Oh, okay, so next we have the hagfish. Hagfish, I think they kind of look like eels. I'm pretty sure that they're pretty ugly. I mean, they're not the most beautiful animal. If you ever tried to pick up a hagfish or something, suddenly it's dripping with slime. So it can secrete slime out of itself, and that actually clogs the gills of predatory fish that come near it. And it can also make them too slippery for someone to grab them. And then we know that like blowfish can blow up and appear larger. Now here's where it gets a little weird. The Texas horned lizard, okay guys, it shoots blood from its eyes, which can reach up to 5 feet and is foul tasting to predators. It shoots blood out of its eyes, y'all, okay? So imagine if somebody's trying to break into your car and you walk out there and then blood shoots out of your eyes onto the person. They're like, ew, that tastes foul. That is foul tasting. I read that animals, they get over it pretty quickly when they have a traumatic experience. Their bodies calm right back down. People have a little bit of a prolonged response. And so yeah, that's what I had. I had this super vigilance, right? After the break-in, even for the next couple nights, I was looking out the windows more, and I knew rationally that there was a 0% chance that anybody was gonna break into my house, right? But I was still a little bit freaked out. And that was the same thing with the Hyundai. I just couldn't trust the car anymore. That car I could have been able to maybe drive that car for another 100,000 miles or something, but I just couldn't trust it anymore. I didn't feel safe in the car anymore. And so I suppose anxiety, right? Anxiety does have a role in our life. It's risk assessment. I think we need motivation. I think we need anxiety, right? A little bit. We can't just say, I think I'll do whatever, whenever, right? You have to think about things, and that's kind of what anxiety does for us. It helps us plan ahead and assess danger, but we don't really have that much danger anymore, do we? In our normal lives, anxiety seems to be kind of going up, and it's weird because our lives seem to be safer for the most part. We're not being attacked by tigers very often anymore. Our kids are not being dragged off by hyenas in the middle of the night, stuff like that. I guess what I'm saying is that fear is a natural part of life. Fear helps us in some ways. We have responses to fear. We have this natural biological fight or flight response. And even anxiety has its adaptive reasons. But these things all become out of control very easily. I think in some ways we're too smart for our own good. The prey animals, they're over it in a couple minutes. And sometimes they learn. Actually, that's another cool fact that I heard, that when you're in the middle of that fear response, your memory increases in some ways. It's because your memory is actually taking things in, and this is another biological thing where your brain immediately opens up to, oh yeah, I gotta remember this so we don't do this shit again, right? So it's pretty crazy that this break-in happened. It's not something that happens very often, and it just got me thinking about fear. And I like horror movies. I guess we kind of being afraid in some ways, as long as we're afraid in the safety of our own home, right? This haunted club sandwich, for example. By the way, this is a 2.0 version of the haunted club sandwich that I did a few years ago, and on the stream recently we spun the wheel to see which older painting that I was going to redo. Haunted club sandwich. A lot of times I bring 3D modeling or 3D sculpting into my process of staging paintings and then painting them. So that's what you're watching right now, or what you have been watching. The stream is every Thursday at 7 o'clock if you want to check that out. Just subscribe to the channel, get notifications and all that stuff. We talked recently a little bit more candidly, I guess you'd say, about the break-in too. It's pretty fascinating. It goes much, much deeper than we realize. You have reactions to things, and then if you stop for a second and you just ask a couple questions, why do we do this? You can learn a lot of stuff. So let me know in the comments if you have any stories about similar stories, or haunted sandwiches that you know anything about, or break-ins. Now, maybe you don't confess any crimes in the comments, because I can't guarantee your safety, or I can't guarantee that it won't be used against you in the court of law. So other than that though, I'd like to hear what you guys think, and thank you. Goodbye.
Hey yo, stay away from here, man. You hear me? I just saw you looking at my car. Don't do it. Don't let me see you out here again, man.